5, 4, 3.
What is up, everyone, and welcome to the pilot episode of MUTV's newest sports show, Coach's Corner. I'm your host, Jake Griffith. Now, if you guessed this show was going to be based on coaches, well, then you guessed right. We want to pick their brains and let you, the viewers, get an inside look at your favorite Marshall programs. This week's guest, Matt Daniel, the head coach of Herd Women's Basketball. He'll join us to talk about the upcoming Conference USA tournament. We'll also have highlights of Senior Day action this past weekend. So buckle up, because the Coach's Corner starts not now, but right now. Hello and welcome. I'm Jake Griffith. This is Matt Daniel, and this is the Coach's Corner right here on MUTV. We'd like to thank you for taking time out of your busy day to join us, and we also like to thank Coach Daniel for stepping out of the office for joining us here. Coach, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm looking forward to the last road trip of the year, heading into the conference tournament. Wrapping up a good season.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you on this first edition. And Coach, before we get to the interview portion of the show, I should say, let's talk about last game, because we do have some highlights of that. It was Senior Day for your team, and always emotional atmosphere.
Sure.
And you kind of see that on the faces of at least a couple players, if not the whole team, on Saturday. Before we dive into those highlights, what is this senior?
Well, they were kind of the upstart of what we were trying to do. Leah Scott is a player that we recruited. She's an all-conference talent. Narisha Victor is not. She's the last player that we didn't recruit that's on our roster, but we kept her. She's been our starting point guard for 4 years. She's probably got the most miles of any player I've ever coached on her. So she's also an integral part. I think they both have careers in basketball if they want them after their collegiate career is over. But they've won every year. They won more and more games every year that they've been here. Sent a school to postseason play that hadn't been in quite some time. Got the school's first ever win in postseason play. So they've had storied careers.
All right, Coach. Well, let's go ahead and dive into those highlights and take a look. If you're interested in breaking down some highlights with us, let's roll those highlights. Like we said, it was Senior Day. There's Narisha Victor and one of the two seniors on the afternoon. Let's pick it up first quarter action here. And early on, it was a close contest. You guys had it rolling. Some of your shots were falling for you guys. First, we see Kiana Evans driving the lane, floater, foul, and one, and then Leah Scott. Look at that move right there. Nice move from Leah Scott.
Yeah, it was. We wanted to be aggressive, getting into the flow of the game. We knew we were going to have to play post defense, as you see a couple of baskets getting away, but we also felt like we could be the aggressor on offense, as you see Riri there on a finish. Defensive rebounding was going to be big. We felt if we defensive rebound, we were going to get out and push the tempo, but if you give them up and give them extra shot opportunities, then you were going to struggle. It was a nice look from Shayna Gore on the assist from Leah.
And Shayna Gore, really, she can fill it up from downtown for you guys. It's something we've seen consistently this season from her. Another example of that again. And then in the second quarter, the wheels kind of started to fall off a little bit. There were some turnovers. We see a turnover there. Shots just weren't falling, and then yet another missed shot here from Chelsea Romero. And then inside, they started taking over down low.
Yeah, they're starting to turn into lowlights rather than highlights. But we struggled in execution in the second quarter. Kind of got away from us, went in down at the halftime. But in the second half, as you can see, we kind of came back and we started scoring the ball at a pretty good clip. Made a close game of it. Made a run at the end, cut it to 6.
And nice move from Shayna Gore there.
It's a good move from Shayna. And unfortunately, we just came up short.
And there was the and one. We see kind of the disgust on your face there, not happy with that call. And it just seemed like the entire afternoon, every time you guys would make a run, Middle Tennessee would answer with another run. It was just hard to overcome, as we see here. Pass around 3 on the way, and it's good from downtown. And they started to pull away again late. Lead pushed back to 11. But in the waning seconds, as we'll see some nice post work down low. In the waning seconds, you guys started to make a comeback. You guys got within 5. Can you talk about that effort at the end?
Well, we wanted to try and push the tempo. We were down and we were trying to pick up the pace, and we were able to get some steals and a few shots off at the end, but as you can see there, unfortunately, we came up short.
And Marshall would fall 79-73. After the game, Narisha Victor talked in the post-game press conference with the media.
How much time left? Like, don't stop playing. And I think that showed that you never out of the game. So I mean, we practiced it, so it's not really nothing new. We just did what we was taught to do.
Give a picture.
And Coach, as you saw, obviously it was a tough loss for you guys at home. It was senior day. But you guys have 2 games left on the schedule. You currently sit at 17-10. And I think one of the most telling things for me in the post-game press conference was what you said about no team really wants to line up across from you guys and say, oh, we have an easy game. How have you, as the coach coming in, how have you sort of changed that, I don't want to say culture around the program, but you've really made it into a contender for Conference USA postseason title?
Well, we just try and keep our nose to the ground and try and play better basketball every play, much less every day. But it's recruiting the right fit, and I think the fit is huge. I think when you're selecting your coaches or you're selecting student athletes to represent the university, and then if you're recruiting the right people, I think the basketball takes care of itself. I'd a whole lot rather have a team full of great young ladies and hope that we're pretty good in basketball as have a team that I know is going to be really good in basketball and hope that they're great young ladies. And we've just been fortunate that it's worked out, and we've turned around the program into an environment that's fun to be around. As you can see, our fan base grow and the style of basketball continue to get better. I think the future is very bright.
So you talk about that bright future, and again, something I took away from the post-game press conference. You said Marshall women's basketball is no longer a hospital. You don't come here to get well. The environment is getting tougher. We heard how loud it was on Saturday. I mean, great fans, great students that come out to the game. But from a player standpoint, going forward, and you talk about that recruiting, this group of ladies you have here, excluding obviously the seniors that will be leaving, what is their I guess you could say limit? I mean, how far can this team go next year?
Well, I don't, I'm not I'm not a result-based guy, so you're gonna have trouble boxing me in on that. But if this season is over, our first focus is going to be to get the first stop and the first score of our opening game of next year, and then let the rest take care of itself. But we recruit locally. So that helps with the fan base and the attachment. I believe in educating our own as much as possible, especially in our sport. We play a style of basketball that's fun to play. It's fun to play against. It's fun to officiate. It's fun to coach. It's fun to watch. And I think that you can tell by the way that we're doing things that it's just going to continue to grow and grow.
Now, Coach, let's talk about the Conference USA tournament now. We'll sort of switch gears here. Obviously, you have a lot of young players, and that's one thing. You watch the pregame intro, they say we're too young to make postseason play. You guys have some young talent on your team, and sometimes with young talent, obviously comes the inexperience and the tendency to make the mistakes that inexperienced players may make. Going into this Conference USA tournament, hoping to make a run, how do you sort of, I guess, quell those emotions that these younger players might have and sort of counteract that inexperience?
Well, sometimes youth it can be a blessing and it can be a curse. Sometimes you go in and you're wide-eyed and you're scared of your environment, and sometimes you don't know any better. And I've been on both ends of that spectrum, but I think our youth has grown up a lot over the year because we've put a lot of our inexperience has had to grow because we put a lot of minutes invested into them as we move forward. So, hopefully we just play good basketball. I don't know which day we're going to play on yet because I don't know what seed we're going to be because we're still in the mix of things. I think we can be anywhere from 5 to 10 or 12. But some things have to go our way to be 5, and some things have to not go our way to be 12. So we're just going to try and take care of this weekend, and that starts with the first stop and the first score at Louisiana Tech.
Okay, so let's sort of we've talked about the Conference USA tournament a little bit, kind of out of order here, but let's backtrack. And you talk about, you don't know what seed you guys are going to be in. Let's preview these final 2 upcoming games for you guys. What can we expect from these final 2 opponents for you guys?
Well, Louisiana Tech's a storied women's basketball program, won national championships, and there's multiple schools with that in this conference. We have one of the toughest women's basketball conferences in the country. They're led by Tyler Summit, who's one of the youngest head coaches in the country, the son of former Tennessee coach Pat Summit. Right. So they've got basketball in their blood down there. They're a team that's ahead of us in the standings right now. They beat us at the buzzer. They beat us at the free throw line on a foul call at the buzzer here last year, so we feel like we owe them in that regard. But they're going to be a very veteran, solid team that's not going to beat themselves. And then Saturday we turn around and play Southern Miss, who is literally tied with us in the standings, so it'll be a big game as well. much like the UAB game was this last week. They're very good at home, very dangerous at home. They're going to play a matchup zone that we have to try and counter, so to speak. So it'll be a tough weekend for us. Anytime you play in conference, it's hard. Anytime you play in conference on the road, it's much harder. And we're just going to try and take one of the youngest teams in the country and hopefully get a split, maybe win two, heading into some momentum heading into the conference tournament.
Now, this is one thing, obviously being a newer student here, coming from a different university, I've had the chance to talk to a lot of other basketball coaches. And it's one thing I always like to talk about with basketball coaches is the personal sort of aspect of basketball coaching. What I mean by that is I've talked to a lot of coaches that they have families, they have children, wives, and they say that helps them in the coaching department. It makes them a better coach. Can you touch on that for a minute? How has sort of being a family man made you a better basketball coach?
Well, I have two daughters. Steele is 3, and Brett is 1, and they were both born in Huntington. They have grounded me, so I can't hardly talk about them, but they've grounded me somewhat in that I want to now recruit in the best way that I know how student athletes that I'm comfortable with them looking up to. That's more important to me than the basketball. I think I'm a coach's kid, but I'm a firm believer that basketball will take care of itself. That being said, they also keep things for me in perspective. I'm very competitive in my environment, my work environment, but outside of work, I'm not that competitive anymore. I want to enjoy things. I just turned 40 this month, so I want to enjoy the second half of my life, so to speak, with the family. But that's kind of how it relates to me. My wife played basketball in college. She's a dentist here in town. We own a dental practice. So there are some priorities. We've laid a foundation here that help me keep things in order and gives me the balance that I certainly need and I think our program needs.
Now, also to sort of kind of touch on what you said there, you live in Huntington, your kids are both born in Huntington. You're clearly a Huntington guy through and through, and how important is that to this university to have, you hear the term Michigan man, how important is it to have a Huntington man at the helms of one of the prominent programs, sports programs here, and how does that help you recruit around the state?
It's always been important to me. Relationships are hugely important. I think they're the key to most everything. And I want to be somewhere where we feel like we belong and that we feel like we're wanted. And that's for my family. And my family is my wife, my 2 daughters, and also our staff. And we want to be embedded in Huntington, in our environment, as much as possible. Now, it's, with our kids being 3 and 1, it's not as much, I can't run to as many other sports games as I would necessarily like because I'm changing diapers. But it's hugely important. It affects me on a daily basis to make sure that we are trying to fit in as well as we can in an environment that we want to be comfortable in.
Now, one thing, but before we let you go, Coach, I do want to ask your opinion. This is a very it's a hotly contested debate when it comes to college basketball, both men's and women's at the NCAA level, and really any level, and it's the scoring. We hear Jay Billis all the time, scoring is down. We hear all these pundits say scoring is down. Mm-hmm. From a coach's perspective in the NCAA, and you get to see this firsthand, what would you do to maybe increase scoring at the men's, women's, or both levels? Any rule changes? I know it's something that's very talked about.
Well, women's basketball has changed a lot of rules this year in adding those, and I like to score it. I like the strategy involved on both sides of the ball. I think that everything is headed towards, I think even the men's game is headed toward 4 quarters. We play 4 quarters now instead of the halves. Right. I think the shot clock's going to eventually go down again for both sides, men and women. But I think if you look at our stats, women's basketball stats, thanks to our crack SID staff, sports information staff, if you look at we've improved every year that we've been here. Points scored, field goal percentage, free throws made, things of that nature, three-pointers made maybe, other statistical categories from an offensive standpoint, which just it makes our style of play more appealing to come to and play in, and more appealing to come and follow and watch games.
Now, you know, you do talk about that with the score and things of that nature, and also the style of play for you guys. And we see it's wildly popular nowadays. The sort of the Golden State Warriors type basketball.
Sure.
A lot of three-point shooting, and there are some that say that has negative impacts on the game of basketball. What's your take on that?
Well, it's really interesting that you bring that up because Steve Kerr is the head coach of the Golden State Warriors. He was the general manager of the Phoenix Suns when Mike D'Antoni was the head coach. Yeah. Mike D'Antoni is the brother, played here, is the brother of D'Antoni, our men's coach, and Steve adapted that style from the D'Antoni family. Really? After they won the World Championship last year, Steve Kerr publicly said the D'Antoni system has been vindicated. So it's a style that we're familiar with here. They used to call it 7 seconds or less. I don't. We want the right 7 seconds, not necessarily the first 7 seconds, but it's a style where the ball doesn't stop. It's a flowing style, which I'm sure you'll hear from Dan when he's on the show. But it's a style that we run a program where everybody can get rich. Shots aren't going to come from one person. They're not going to dominate the basketball unless I call for that. Otherwise, the ball is going to find the open shot. Not necessarily the scheme is going to find the open shot. So it's a system that I'm very comfortable in, that I like a lot, and you're right, it is becoming wildly popular, and it's becoming the way that basketball should be played in this realm.
All right, it's really, like you said, it's very enjoyable to watch, very pleasing to even the casual fan. It's attracting a lot of fans. So, Coach, we'd like to thank you for joining us. We got to get out of here. So thanks for joining us here on set, and we'd also like to thank you, the viewers, for tuning into this first edition of Coach's Corner. For everyone here at MUTV and the School of Journalism, I'm Jake Griffith. This has been a presentation of Coach's Corner on MUTV. Until next time, everyone.